Good day. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Montreal, Canada for Reason to Resist on February 17th, 2026, with my latest rant of the week. This past Sunday, the National Basketball Association held its annual All-Star Game. The game featured, as usual, NBA superstar Lebron James, who goes by the name on X of King James. It also featured, for the first time, an Israeli basketball player, Deni Avdija. Before the match, an Israeli reporter asked LeBron about Israel. And here's what the king had to say.
14 in Israel, for all the Israeli fans, what message would you like to send for Israel? And also, what do you think about Deni Avdija?
Well, I've been quoted on Danny already. And they asked me what I thought about this season. I said I believe he was an all-star. And, he is an all-star. He's playing, exceptional, basketball. So that's that. And then, if I have fans over there, I've never been there. If I have fans over there, then, I hope you have been following my career. I hope I inspire people over there to not only want to be great in sports, but I want you to be better in general in life. So hopefully someday I can make it over there. Like I said, I've never been over there, but I've heard nothing but great things. And I appreciate the question.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate it.
He's heard nothing but great things about Israel. There are either two possibilities here, one of two possibilities. First of all, it's possible that LeBron James has no connection to the internet and during the past 2+ years of in-your-face genocide has had his head stuck perpetually up his own ass. There's another possibility, a simpler explanation and more plausible one, and that is that LeBron James is simply lying about Israel. Since LeBron is very active on social media, has been throughout his entire career, and has nearly 48 million followers on X alone, I think we can safely exclude the possibility that LeBron James hasn't seen anything negative said about Israel in any context whatsoever. It's simply inconceivable that this man has heard nothing bad about Israel during the course of his career. As a result of LeBron's lies about Israel, I decided to post a comment about him on X, which I've put up here on the screen. And as you can see, I expressed the view that after spending decades building his own legacy, the king had managed to destroy it in less than 60 seconds. As of a few hours ago, this post on X had 1.4 million views and more than 80,000 likes. So I think we can safely say that I'm not the only person out there who thinks that LeBron is lying through his teeth about Israel. LeBron, by the way, is one of the richest people on the planet. Forbes estimates his net worth to be approximately $1.3 billion US. This would make him one of the 3,000 wealthiest persons on the planet, according to Forbes. Now, stepping back for a moment, it boggles the mind that anyone should have this much money for any reason whatsoever, but especially simply because they have an exceptional ability to shoot a ball through a hoop. Maybe it's just me, but I find that utterly insane. All of this prompted me today to do something that I've wanted to do for a long time, and that is rant about the cesspool of professional sports. Why does this topic merit a rant? Well, for the simple reason that we as a society, and I'm speaking here about societies across the world, but particularly in the West, we invest enormous energy and resources in professional sports. People, it's not unusual to find people in your everyday activities, colleagues at work, friends, people you see in bars, devoting hours and hours every week to watching professional sporting events, to studying statistics about professional sporting events, to listening to talking heads, analysts pontificate endlessly and vacuously about professional sporting events and professional sports teams and particular athletes. And frankly, the amount of time that we are investing in these activities, these rather mindless and, as I'm going to explain in a moment, propagandistic activities, is taking us away from doing things which are far more beneficial, not only for society at large, but for ourselves, our communities, and for our own children, which is to say, informing ourselves about the realities of this world and doing something about those harsh realities. Quite apart from the time and energy we're investing in professional sports, as a society, we are also expending enormous amounts of money on those sports. If you go to the stadium, you're going to have to pay for the privilege of sitting there for 2 or 3 hours and watching these spoiled brats run around a court or a field. And the prices for the privilege of going into these stadiums can be quite steep indeed. But even if you're sitting at home watching these sports, you have to pay for the cable service, which allows you to watch them from the comfort of your own home. And another thing about these activities, sporting events, which I find rather bizarre, quite apart from the amount of time, energy, and money that we sink into them, is the fact that people seem to think that the professional sports franchises, which are situated in their city, are somehow a reflection upon their city. So if the Toronto Blue Jays win the World Series, somehow that reflects positively on Toronto, even though virtually none of the athletes were born in Toronto, were raised in Toronto, were trained in Toronto, learned their craft in Toronto. And even though they would readily abandon Toronto the moment that they can find a sweeter financial arrangement somewhere else. So they do not in any way, shape, or form reflect upon the quality or lack thereof of our communities. But we seem to, adopt these sports franchises as though they're virtually members of our own families. Now, the uber wealthy love to promote professional sports precisely because it is a way for them to distract and manipulate us while they rob us blind. It's so ridiculous, the greed with which these people, separate us from our money, that even after you've paid a steep price to enter into a stadium, they then use you as a member of a captive audience to bombard you with another form of propaganda, corporate propaganda. Advertisements nowadays are everywhere in the stadium and on the television set when you're watching a professional sporting event, especially one for which there is a high demand. They're showing you, advertisements on electronic panels that ring the court or the field. They're showing you advertisements up on the Videotron. They're blaring advertisements across the sound system in the stadium. They're showing advertisements at the confectionery booth. They've got advertising displays in the hallways outside the stadium after you enter into the building. I mean, it's just nonstop bombardment of corporate propaganda. And of course, the owners of these franchises are being paid by these large corporations to use the sporting event as a way to display their advertisements. So you're literally paying for the privilege of being propagandized by large corporations. Now, professional sports are also a way to propagandize us about international affairs. American football, as a matter of fact, is, in my view, one of the most shameless promoters of the military-industrial complex. And I'm going to give you but one example of this. I could give you countless examples from American football. During the singing of the national anthem at the Super Bowl this year, the world was repeatedly shown images from the deck of a U.S. aircraft carrier situated in waters near Iran. And this is one of the images that appeared on the screen repeatedly as the national anthem was being sung at the outset of this year's Super Bowl. So what was effectively being done, I would suggest, is that the NFL used the Super Bowl to help manufacture consent for another criminal war of aggression on Iran. Now, another propaganda objective of professional sports is, in my view, to normalize violence. The NFL, the NHL, and mixed martial arts, amongst other sports, are extremely violent. American football is so violent that a 2017 study found that 99% of brains obtained from former NFL players suffered from chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, a progressive degenerative brain disease found in people with a history of repeated concussions. Now, why does the billionaire class want to desensitize us to and normalize violence? because they themselves routinely use violence, including the most sadistic forms of violence, to dominate, exploit, and pillage the rest of us. A third propaganda objective of professional sports is to demonize official enemies of the West while sanitizing the crimes of Western states and their proxies. So, for example, UEFA and FIFA, the European and global associations of football, respectively, immediately banned Russian football clubs and the Russian national football team from their football competitions when Russian forces invaded Ukraine in early 2022. And those bans remain in effect to this very day. However, despite immense public pressure to ban Israel from European and world football competitions, football teams from the genocidal Israeli entity, some of which are openly and flagrantly racist, are permitted to participate in UEFA and FIFA competitions more than 2 years after Israel's genocide began. They continued, these football associations, to allow these racist teams to take part in European and world football competitions, despite a call from UN human rights experts to do to Israeli teams as was done to Russian football teams and to suspend them from these competitions. At every step, FIFA and UEFA have resisted enormous public pressure to act in a morally consistent manner with respect to football teams from countries that are violating human rights and international law. And by the way, if they were to do that, they would not only ban Israel, they would unhesitatingly ban the United States itself from these international football competitions. But that's not a subject that is even on the table for discussion. Now, it's worse than that, folks. UEFA, the European Football Association, allows Israel to participate in European competitions, even though Israel is not in Europe, and excludes Russia from those competitions, even though Russia is a European country. Recently, FIFA, the World Football Association, sunk to a new low in the White House. In early December, at the World Cup draw, FIFA President Gianni Infantino disgraced himself and his entire organization by giving a peace prize, which he had invented, to the war criminal Donald Trump. And here you can see a photograph of this shameless event. Infantino, a close ally of Trump, said he thought Trump should have won the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to broker a ceasefire in Gaza. That would be the so-called ceasefire during which Israel, with the full-throated support of the United States government, has murdered more than 700 Palestinians in Gaza, many of them children and women. In awarding the FIFA peace joke to Trump, Infantino told Trump it was a, quote, beautiful medal for you that you can wear everywhere you want to go, close quote. Trump promptly obliged and placed the medal around his neck. In the world today, there's no leader who is less deserving of any peace prize than the orange psychopath in the White House. But like all professional sports bodies, FIFA wants to manipulate us into thinking that the genocidal maniac is a champion of peace. Similarly, the International Olympic Committee has excluded the teams of Russia and Belarus from the Winter Olympics. And by the way, what the fuck did Belarus do to merit suspension from the Olympics? It was not the forces of Belarus that invaded Ukraine. It was Russian forces. And although Belarus is close to Russia, as are other countries, its military has stayed out of the conflict until now. Meanwhile, the IOC is allowing the war criminals from the genocidal Israeli entity to participate in the Winter Olympics. And when they trotted into the Olympic Stadium in Italy at the outset of the event, they were roundly booed by people who many of the people in the stadium who clearly disagreed profoundly with the decision of the IOC to allow these war criminals to participate. By the way, does Israel even have a fucking winter? Now, in this rant, I want to focus specifically on two world-renowned footballers, Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. Why? Because they're among the world's wealthiest and most recognizable professional athletes. And I think that their cases are particularly egregious when it comes to the question of human decency in professional sports. Ronaldo, we'll start with him, is reputed to have a net worth of $1.4 billion, which again would make him one of the wealthiest people on the planet, and even wealthier than King James. At the age of 40, after winning almost every trophy that it's possible for a footballer to win, Ronaldo signed a $400 million contract to play in Saudi Arabia, one of the most repressive countries on earth. For years, Ronaldo's adoring fans have claimed that he was a supporter of the Palestinian cause. But I myself have seen little to no credible evidence to support that claim. In a recent interview of Ronaldo, Piers Morgan asked the insanely wealthy athlete about his purported support for peace. And here's what Ronaldo had to say.
This President Trump, friend of mine, was given a CR7 shirt by the Portuguese European Council President, Antonio Costa, in June at the G7 summit. And you wrote on it, to President Donald J. Trump, playing for peace. What did you mean by that?
If the world is in peace, it's our goal. He's one of the guys that can change or help to change the world. And it's my main goal. He's one of the most important guys, of course, is US president. If we can help each other to make this happen, because I swear, Chris, I can't watch TV because
it's been awful.
I don't watch. I swear I can't. Sometimes I'm start to see the news I can't. I can't. And one of the guys that I want to meet. I wish one day, if you have an opportunity,
Trump. I can make that happen.
Make that happen, or tell him that one of the guys that I want to sit to have a nice talk. It was one of the guys.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. Here, US, wherever he wants. I know he was here in Saudi with our boss, MBS. I wish one day to meet him, to sit with him, because he's one of the persons that I really like him, because I think it can make things happen, and I like people like that.
Where does one even begin with this? First of all, he referred to the sadistic crown prince of Saudi Arabia, bin Salman, as our boss. So he evidently considers himself to be an employee of that psychopath. Secondly, he said no less than 4 times that I can't watch the news when anything relating to war, suffering appears on the screen. This is a man who lives and has lived for his entire career in a state of unspeakable opulence and privilege. You'd think the least that he could do is force himself to actually watch what is happening in parts of the world that are suffering enormously because of imperialism and injustice. I'll tell you that I myself, and I know a number of conscientious people who can say the same thing, I've forced myself on dozens and dozens of occasions during the past 2+ years of genocide to watch the most horrific videos coming out of occupied Palestine and other parts of the world where there is enormous suffering being caused by my government, because I believe it's my obligation to bear witness, to inform myself about what is happening in these parts of the world, so that I can better inform my fellow citizens in my capacity as a journalist, a lawyer, and as an activist about the realities of life in these regions of the world that are being crushed and decimated by our psychopathic elites. But Ronaldo considers that too much of a painful experience, simply sitting in the comfort of his own palace and watching what is happening on the news so that he can better understand what the realities of this world are. And if he did actually take the time to do that, perhaps he wouldn't feel so well disposed to Donald Trump, and perhaps he wouldn't have fallen victim to the outrageous lie that Donald Trump is a champion of peace. So I don't know about you, but I didn't find that exchange with Piers Morgan, of all people, to be remotely persuasive when it comes to the question of whether this extraordinarily wealthy professional athlete gives a damn about war and peace and the suffering in this world. And by the way, he ultimately did meet with Donald Trump and has been roundly criticized for it, Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, let's turn to Lionel Messi. Arguably, Messi is even more recognizable than Cristiano Ronaldo. He's thought by many to be, in fact, the most prolific, outstanding footballer in the history of the sport. And Messi, too, like Cristiano Ronaldo, is extraordinarily wealthy. You can see up here on the screen a recent report from late 2024, which identifies Messi as being the second wealthiest athlete in the world, behind Cristiano, or I think footballer, I should say, the second wealthiest footballer in the world, with an estimated $850 million of net worth. In 2016, despite making more money than his adoring fans could ever dream of, Messi was convicted by a Spanish court for tax evasion. Despite being sentenced by the Spanish court to 21 months in jail, Messi did not spend a single day in the Hoosegow. Now, what does it take to persuade a wealthy person that they have enough so that they don't even feel tempted to engage in tax evasion? At the time that Messi was sentenced to 21 months in jail for tax evasion, a criminal offense, he was in the prime of his career. He had already made insane amounts of money and was undoubtedly going to make far more over the course of his career. So there was absolutely no need for Messi to do anything other than pay every single dime of taxes he owed under the applicable laws. And if he had done that, he still would have been far wealthier than 99.9% of humanity. But apparently all those hundreds of millions of dollars he had earned were not enough, and he decided to break the law in a manner that attracted a criminal penalty. Now, I must admit that I have followed Lionel Messi closely for many years because, and I confess, there is one professional sport for which I retain a weakness. I used to be a fan of many professional sports, but over the years I became increasingly disinterested in them. There's one sport to this very day that I do watch from time to time, and that is European football. And Messi played during the prime of his career at the one professional sports franchise that I have followed and continue to follow in recent years, and that is Football Club Barcelona. Yet for all the times I've heard Messi speak, I can't remember a single occasion in which he ever expressed a word of sympathy for the oppressed or uttered a peep of condemnation of the oppressors. In fact, Messi's carefully curated public commentary studiously avoids even a hint of political controversy. Every time I listen to Lionel Messi open his mouth, I'm reminded of that scene from the all-time baseball classic Bull Durham, in which a catcher explains to an up-and-coming pitcher how he should speak to the media.
Teach me something new, man. I need to learn. Teach me something.
Well, you got something to write with? Good. It's time to work on your interviews.
My interviews? What do I gotta do?
You're gonna have to learn your cliches. You're gonna have to study them. You're gonna have to know them. They're your friends. Write this down. We gotta play them one day at a time.
Got to play. It's pretty boring.
Of course it's boring. That's the point. Write it down.
One day at a time.
All right. I'm just happy to be here. Hope I can help the ball club. I know. Write it down. I just want to give it my best shot, and the good Lord willing, things will work out.
Good Lord willing.
Things will work out. Yep. How's Annie?
How many times, folks, have you heard professional athletes mutter pointless inanities such as those? And yet, somehow, some way, they manage to earn the adulation of people around the world. This is one of the greatest feats of modern propaganda ever. Now, let me say that although 99% of elite athletes conduct themselves in this disgraceful manner, there are a few notable exceptions, and I'm just going to mention two. There are others. This is not an exhaustive list, but they are few and far between. And the two I have in mind are Gary Lineker and Eric Cantona, both European professional footballers who have distinguished themselves over the years for standing up for the oppressed. But as I said, they are the exception. The vast majority of these spoiled brats readily throw the oppressed under the bus in order to preserve their lucrative sponsorships. Now, although Lionel Messi refuses to use his global platform to defend the weak and the persecuted, he's happy to use it for other purposes.
Police.
Yes, and that purpose is hawking junk food to children. Imagine having $850 million and lowering yourself to hawking junk food to children to make a few additional bucks. The truth of the matter is, my friends, that for the most part, elite athletes could not care less about you and me, and they could not care less about our children or our communities. They are paid mercenaries whose singular goal is to milk you for every dollar that you've earned and to propagandize you. And in the process, they become fabulously wealthy. So please, let's stop giving so much of ourselves to these wealthy charlatans. And we have so much better uses to make of our time, including and particularly informing ourselves about the realities of this world so that we can finally bring about a state of justice and peace for all of humanity. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you with my latest rant of the week on February 17th, 2026.